Now from here starts the conversation. Are you going to finish that pair of shoe today? Asked Defarge, motioning to Mr. Lorry to come forward. Now, who were these people? Defarge was his loyal servant when he came out of the prison, and Mr. Lorry was an old friend of his daughter Lucy. So, here the servant was asking to that shoemaker that are you going to finish that pair of shoes today? What is described in the first scene, the first picture here, that the person was sitting there with an unfinished shoe. That's why the servant is asking that will you be able to finish this piece of shoe today? And also he signaled Mr. Lorry to come forward. What did you say? He asked to the servant. Do you mean to finish that pair of shoe today? I can't say that I mean to. I suppose so. I don't know. Here, this paragraph says or seems that it is very confusing. The shoemaker was very confused and he was surprised at the question of the servant whether he would be able to finish the shoemaking today, and he said that he was not sure whether he would be able to finish the pair of shoe by that day itself. But the question remained him of his work and he bent over it again. But now what he realized that this is the question about his work. So he must take the action and he started working over again that shoe. Mr. Lorry came silently forward, leaving the daughter by the door. Now, because the servant signaled Mr. Lorry to come forward, Mr. Lorry came forward silently but without his daughter. When he had stood for a minute or two by the side of Defarge, the shoemaker looked up. And for a long time, the shoemaker did not notice that someone else was also there. When Mr. Lorry came forward, he stood up there for around 2 minutes beside that servant, and then the shoemaker noticed him. He showed no surprise at seeing another figure, but the unsteady fingers of one of his hands strayed to his lips as he looked at it. His lips and his nails were of the same pale lead color. And then the hand dropped to his work and he once more bent over his shoe. Now, what happened? When Mr. Lorry came, he stood up for their 2 minutes. The shoemaker did not notice. After around 2 minutes, he noticed that someone else was also there. But at the presence of Mr. Lorry, the shoemaker was not surprised at all. He did not show any reaction. But he unsteady finger of his one hand, he put up his one hand and he moved the fingers of one hand on his lips, and the color of his lips and his nails was the same pale lead color. And then he put down his hand again and he again started working. Now here the term is used, unsteady finger. What is the meaning of unsteady? Unsteady means liable to fall or shake. Liable to fall or shake. So here he put up his hands and the fingers of his hands, or the hand was shaking. He put his hands, the fingers, on his lips, and here it is mentioned that the color of his lips and his nails was the same. It was pale lead yellow color. But this was not out of any surprise when he saw Mr. Lorry. It was a expressionless action. It is not because of the presence of Mr. Lorry. He looked at him and again he put down his hand and started working his job. What was he doing? He was making a pair of shoe. The look and the action had occupied but an instant. It was for an instant only and it did not have any reaction. You have a visitor, you see, said Monsieur Defray. Now the servant, when he looked at that person and he started working again with his pair of shoe. So now the servant said that you have a visitor. Someone had come to meet you. Now the Monsieur meaning is given, French word for Mr. We have learned it somewhere in your previous class also. What did you say? Here is a visitor. So the shoemaker asked again to the servant, what was he asking? What was he saying? The servant again repeated his sentence that here is a visitor. Someone has come to meet the shoemaker. The shoemaker looked up as before, but without removing a hand from his work. Now again, the shoemaker looked at that person, at Mr. Lorry, but he did not stop his work. He did not remove his hands from the making of shoe that he was doing. Come, said Defarge, here is Monsieur, who knows a well-made shoe when he sees one. Show him that shoe you are working at. Take it, Monsieur. Now this was the phrase that was said by the servant. He asked Mr. Lorry and he told Mr. Lorry about the shoemaker that he knows a well-made shoe when he sees one. He can make a good pair of shoes when he is able to see the one, and he asked the shoemaker to show that pair of shoe to Mr. Lorry that he was working with as an example that what quality of shoe he can make. Mr. Lorry took it in his hand. When he presented the shoe to Mr. Lorry to have a look, Mr. Lorry took the shoe in his hand. Tell Monsieur what kind of shoe it is and the maker's name. There was a longer pause than usual before the shoemaker replied. Now, Mr. Lorry asked about the kind of shoe that he was making, and he also inquired about the name of the shoemaker. So, when he put his question, there was a long pause before the shoemaker replied to the question. What was the reply? I forgot what it was you asked me. What did you say? After a long pause, what was the reply of the shoemaker? That he forgot what Mr. Lorry asked him, and he asked Mr. Lorry to repeat his question again, that what did you say? I said, could not you describe the kind of shoe for information? Now here the servant is saying, when the shoemaker asked again and again to the person to describe about the shoe, then the servant asked again, that he is asking about the kind of shoe. So please describe him, please provide him the information about the shoe that you are making. It's a lady shoe. It is a young lady's walking shoe. It is in the present mode. I never saw the mode. I have had a pattern in my hand. He glanced at the shoe with some little passing touch of pride. Now the shoemaker replied that what kind of shoe it is? It is a lady shoe. It is used for walking and it is in the present mode. Present mode means currently this kind of shoe is in fashion. It is in trend, and he said that he never saw any such shoe. He started working over this design because he had this kind of design in his mind. This pattern was there in his mind. And he looked at the shoe with pride because it was his original idea. And the maker's name, said Defarge. The servant asked again, and what is the name of the shoemaker? Now that he had no work to hold, he laid the knuckles of the right hand in the hollow of the left and the knuckles of the left hand in the hollow of the right, and then passed a hand across his bare chin and so in regular changes without a moment's intermission. Now here what all is described in these lines, that when again he was asked about the name of the shoemaker, he did not reply anything, but he did some action. And what was the action? What are the knuckles? Can anyone tell me? Okay, the meaning of knuckle, a part of finger a part of finger at a joint. Basically, the joints are known as the knuckle. So, what he did? He knuckled the fingers of the left hand into the hole of the fingers of the right hand, and the right hand to the left hand, and this thing. He was doing continuously. Only this thing is described in these lines, and then passed a hand across his beard, chin, and so in regular changes without a moment's intermission. And he repeated this action continuously. The task of recalling him from the vacancy into which he always sank when he had spoken was like recalling some very weak person from a swoon, or endeavoring in the hope of some disclosure to stay the spirit of a fast dying man. Here, now, this is his reaction or his thinking about when he was asked about the name of the shoemaker. First, come to the meaning of the terms that is given. Swoon means fainting fit. Endeavoring, the meaning is given trying very hard. And hope of some disclosure, hoping to know some secret, means it was very difficult for him to recall. He was trying hard to recall as if it was a secret. And here he was saying that to stay the spirit of a fast dying man. He was feeling himself that there is a spirit of fast dying man. Did you ask me for my name? Now he questioned to the Mr. Lorry that whether he was asking for his name. Assuredly, I did. What was the reply of Mr. Lorry? Sure, I wanted to know your name. 105 North Tower. This was the reply from the shoemaker. Is that all? Asked Mr. Lorry. 105 North Tower. He again repeated the same lines.